this timely and important briefing and panel. My name is Chilling Tong, CEO and President of the Asian Pacific Islander American Chamber of Commerce and Entrepreneurship. We also call National ACE. We are a national nonprofit organization whose mission is to serve as a strong advocate of AAPI business interest. For the past 11 months, we have worked closely with our national network of more than 65 affiliate AAPI chambers and partners around the country to ensure that our community has access to the important resources. Many of our partners are here with us. Thank you. Today, the National ACE and Reimagine Mainstream, an initiative of public-private strategies, release new survey data on the experience of AAPI business owners during the COVID-19 pandemic. The briefing and the panel discussion will also address the impact of COVID-19 pandemic on AAPI business owners. We have reserved some time for question and answer, so please type your question in the chat box. Additionally, we are recording this event. Before we share the survey findings, I would like to introduce Congresswoman Grace Min, who represents the 6th Congressional District of New York. She is a member of the House Appropriations Committee and the House Ethics Committee. In addition, Congresswoman Min has fought to expand opportunities for communities of color, young people, and women. And she secured resources to help local small business. She has become our national leader, and we are just so proud she's one of us. Welcome, Congresswoman Min.
Thank you so much, Chiling, for your kind introduction and for your tremendous leadership around the country. Thank you also to Jimmy and Daniel of National ACE for your work in helping to organize today's virtual discussion on the national survey of AAPI small business owners affected by COVID-19, and what a timely topic. I also want to recognize my colleague who you'll hear from soon, Congressman Andy Kim, for his tireless work. You recently saw just one example of his compassionate leadership in Congress. There are nearly 2 million AAPI business owners with fewer than 20 employees, and yet they generate nearly $700 billion in annual revenue. But that success is not uniform, and there are many who are falling through the cracks because of the pandemic. We all know the importance of saving them, as they are anchors in our communities from the East to West Coast that drive economic growth and job creation. This, however, is incredibly difficult during this national health crisis. As the National ACE survey shows, they've been struggling on many fronts, including two that stick out specifically because of COVID. First, the pandemic has weighed heavily on small businesses' bottom lines. Many respondents in the survey said they are experiencing a decline in revenue. Compounding those concerns was anti-Asian sentiment related to COVID-19. Over 50% of respondents said anti-Asian sentiment was affecting their daily operations. These two examples are just a snapshot of how damaging this virus has been on AAPI small businesses. In my home state of New York, even before the first cases hit, the vicious discrimination and hate severely harmed our communities. In fact, many AAPI-owned businesses were the canary in the coal mine. Today's discussion shines a critical light on the challenges they faced and underscores why we need additional support for them. Last year, Congress delivered much-needed COVID-19 relief packages to help our country. While the Small Business Administration's Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program and Paycheck Protection Program, PPPs, brought limited relief, It was not a cure. Last December, Congress delivered a $900 billion coronavirus package that included several solutions to help our small businesses. Some of the notable features included reopening the PPP program and permitting certain small businesses to apply for a second round of funding. Last August, PPP closed despite having over $130 billion left in funding. Simplifying the PPP loan forgiveness process for loans of $150,000 and under. Nearly 90% of PPP loans are under this amount. And also included infusing $20 billion for the Emergency Economic Injury Disaster Loan Grant Program. These are some of the important steps that were urgently needed, but more must be done in the days ahead. Thankfully, with the Biden administration, we have a partner who is willing to help us get through this national health crisis. I will continue to push to bring meaningful support for our AAPI small businesses that are anchors in our communities and bring investment, people, and jobs to our nation. Thank you so much for your work and for being such a great partner in this fight. Please stay safe and healthy, everyone.
Thank you, Congresswoman Mann. Thank you for your leadership and commitment to support our business community. Now I'm excited to introduce our partner at PPS, Katie Warnerberg, who will discuss the result of our survey. Since the beginning of a COVID-19 pandemic early in 2020, AAPIs have faced an uphill battle. Between February and April of 2020, Asian self-employment dropped by 233,000, representing a 28% decline, and as many as 44% of AAPI women have been unemployed for more than 6 months. It's really heartbreaking. Sadly, AAPIs represent a large share of initial unemployment insurance claims. This pandemic has challenged our community in ways we never could have imagined, and it is imperative that Congress acts to ensure that COVID relief is equitable. We must also continue to do our part in collecting more meaningful data on our community and ensuring that it gets into the hands of those making decisions. With that said, I'm pleased to pass it over to Katie to review our survey data. Katie.
Thank you, Xiling, for that. And I will go ahead and share my screen with you all. And I just want to give thanks to Congresswoman Meng, who teed up this conversation with some very important data. So I will start with this. So as Xiling mentioned, this is a pretty extensive data set of business information. National ACE commissioned the survey to fully assess the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on not just AAPI businesses, but also Black, Hispanic, Native American, and white businesses, culminating in the largest survey of business owners of color that we believe has been fielded. AAPI businesses, like their Black, Hispanic, and white counterparts, have been negatively impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. I know that this is a point that is hard because as everyone has had immense challenges dealing with this, it's been really important for National ACE to work with their counterparts, primarily at the United States Black Chamber of Commerce and the United States Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, to share this data to ensure that any future and former relief efforts have been able to address the true crisis of the situation. Advocacy of AAPI businesses continues to be crucial to ensure that federal programs are positioned to support AAPI businesses. So just a little bit about the survey sample I'm going to share with you this afternoon is that this is nearly 900 AAPI business owners responded and completed the survey. In total, as you'll see in the last bullet point, there were 8,328 business owners that completed the survey. We actually had about 13,000 business owners start the survey. So it's quite a treasure trove of information. The survey respondents include representation from every AAPI ethnicity, and it is a broad representation of years in business. This is something that's really important when we've been advocating on behalf of AAPI businesses, that our survey data shows AAPI Next Gen are very active, but that most businesses within the AAPI community have been established 10 plus years. The other thing that was really important to us is to have gender parity. So we had roughly the same amount of male and female business owners respond to the survey. It was just a slightly higher male respondent. So we know this, AAPI businesses are micro and small. I've broken this out by male and female just for you to see it. And then the last horizontal bar graph is the total sample of the 8,000 business owners. So you'll see the AAPI businesses match their counterparts. They tend to skew self-employed to 5 employees. That's really the sweet spot for most business owners in our country, as we know from the statistics. And so in some cases, being able to show that AAPI businesses mirror the rest of the small business community is important. What I thought was interesting about this is just, there are more female AAPI business owners that are self-employed than their male counterparts by a larger margin. And we know this, businesses are not operating as usual. You will see that over 50% are having some impact to their business. We have seen businesses permanently close. There is a large percentage that have temporarily closed, but you really see about 52% of businesses are really experiencing some challenges as it relates to their operations. They are either operating with significant workforce modifications, or they're partially open due to various state restrictions on their business operations. And again, as you can, from this previous slide, it makes sense that the majority of businesses have been negatively impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. And so you see almost 80%, 86% of businesses, regardless if they're even operating modified, have been negatively impacted. So, this is something that we continue to talk about. And I was so happy that Congresswoman Mang, spoke to, unfortunately, what I would use the plight of small businesses, because, they have had to adjust their business operations ongoing and throughout this pandemic. And they can say that COVID-19 has negatively impacted them. I think we all sympathetically can also understand that it's impacted just all of our daily lives. But for small business owners, we know it's their livelihood that's been impacted. The one thing that we also know, and again, was commented out in our introductory comments, is the impact of revenue. So what we've done here is compared the change in revenue by AAPI businesses, again, to that total sample. And what you'll see is businesses as a whole have seen a greater than 25% decline in their business revenue from 2019 to 2020. Again, AAPI businesses have seen a slightly increased decline in their revenue of at least 76% than their total counterparts, and really have tracked on having a revenue down between 25 and 75%. So this is pretty dire, and we know that the situation continues to be challenging for our business owners. The other thing that has been sad is we've seen that AAPI businesses have lost employees. And again, because of the demographics of the survey, you can see that male owners have lost more, have decreased their employee base more than females. But in total, 45% of AAPI businesses have lost an employee during the pandemic. So the other thing is, we know that there's been an incredible interest in federal relief programs. As you can see here, of course, the highest interest has been in the Paycheck Protection Program, followed by the Economic Injury Disaster Loan. There's a fair about 25% of the population of survey respondents says they have not applied for financial aid. And then a small other group has identified other federal programs. If they have an agricultural-based business, there's been relief provided by the Department of Ag and so forth. But we know that AAPI businesses have been aware of the PPP program. But what we also know is that they did not know if they were eligible. So you see this, the biggest graph. So 55% of male AAPI business owners did not think that they were eligible for federal assistance. So they did not apply for PPP. They did not apply for EIDL. 63% of those respondents who said that they weren't aware of programs said they didn't think that they were eligible for that federal funding. And this is a huge issue. And this is what National ACE has spent a lot of time talking to congressional lawmakers about, is the need for organizations like National ACE to be the messenger into those communities to talk about what they are eligible, how do they apply, how do they tap into those immense resources that the federal government has provided to support business owners. The other thing is, and this, just so you know, that this survey was fielded in October through the end of November 2020. And so one of the things that I'd like to call out is an AAPI business owner who responded in November saying that they only have 1 to 3 months of cash has run out of money. We see that you will have a potentially higher number of AAPI businesses that will have to make the difficult decisions to either close their business temporarily or permanently because they don't have the cash to sustain their business operations. And of course, as you can imagine, when we put a variety of options in front of the respondents and ask them, what would be the most helpful, is, businesses prefer relief that doesn't increase debt. That is the biggest thing we've heard since the beginning of the pandemic, is business owners were not interested in taking a loan. They wanted to have access to grants. They wanted PPP at a certain rate to be completely refundable, forgivable. And so we see this, that overwhelmingly small businesses want access to either federal, state, or local grants that doesn't increase their debt. The other small difference between AAPI businesses and their counterparts was this idea of how could a reduction of tax rates or deferrals be a tool that the federal government could use to support businesses. And I do know that there's some language in the upcoming relief bill that will suspend for a period of time some tax payments to AAPI business or to small businesses, and we'll be sure to update you on this. But as you can see, AAPI businesses are very aware that there is actually a lot of resources, or I would say tools, that both federal, state, and local businesses can leverage to help them. I wanted to end on a little piece of optimism because I feel, unfortunately, Shiling and Daniel and Jimmy know we've been living with this data for a few months, and sometimes in the darkest moments, we're trying to project, optimism, and this is actually felt by AAPI business owners, and pretty evenly between male and female. Almost 60%, almost 70% feel somewhat or very optimistic about the future. And this is really important because this is a stat that goes across the small business community. Small business owners by nature are entrepreneurs. And so they look at the world, I think, a little bit differently. They see the opportunity, they see the financial future that they're trying to plan for themselves and their family. And so I did want to end with just a little optimism to show that even in the toughest of time, when someone is saying, I may only have 3 months of cash left, they're still somewhat optimistic that they're going to get through this, that they're going to figure it out because they are entrepreneurial, or that they will be able to access those federal and state and local programs that will help their business stay afloat. So I just wanted to highlight 4 things that I know will also be fleshed out in our conversation later in today's briefing. But we continue to emphasize the importance of providing support and technical assistance. I know that one of the things that one of our panelists is pretty passionate about is, language accessibility. That remains an issue that we see with AAPI businesses, and given the diversity of the AAPI businesses, having multi-language resources is really important. But again, in general, just being able to provide information directly to AAPI businesses about what they're eligible for. We're going to collect additional data in April in advance of AAPI Heritage Month to further support AAPI business recovery. We'd love to hear from you what you think would be useful as you continue to advocate both on the federal level, but within your states as well. And then I think, again, we want to be positive. We want to champion the AAPI business owners' resiliency and optimism. And then a priority for National ACE is to continue to cultivate those partnerships with their counterparts so that there is a somewhat of a singular voice in talking about the needs and opportunities for small business owners to weather the global pandemic and come out of it stronger and more resilient than they had. So I'm going to exit out of my screen share and transition back. And I'm going to turn it over to Jimmy Ferguson, who is the policy committee chairman and a former board chair of National ACE. Oh, I'll stop my share because you can see my computer now. But Jimmy, I'm going to turn over to you to introduce Congressman Kim.
Thank you, Katie. It is my honor to introduce Congressman Andy Kim, who represents the 3rd Congressional District of New Jersey. Congressman is a member of the House Committee on Small Business, the House Armed Services Committee, and the House Foreign Affairs Committee. The Congressman Kim is the first AAPI to represent New Jersey in the House of Representatives. And he has a strong record of supporting small business and increasing success to the healthcare. So welcome, Congressman Kim.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Jimmy. It's great to see you. Always happy to do programs with you. You've been such a great leader. And thank you all for letting me come and just speak with you for a few minutes, really about this incredibly important issue that we're all facing. I was really blown away by some of the data that was presented. Katie went through some of it just now because it highlights and underscores a lot of what I've been hearing in my own district. I've been hearing from a lot of people in my district as well as across New Jersey about the struggles that they've been facing, and particularly the AAPI community and communities of color, struggling when it comes to understanding both in terms of how they can get the help and the support that they need, but also in terms of what next, what comes next, are they going to envision being able to pull themselves out of this effort, who's going to be there to help them. And this has been incredibly frustrating to see how so many of them felt very alone through this process. And that's why it is that I've continued to partner with ACE about this, because you all just play such an important role in being that kind of bridge of information. 2 points that I just want to highlight out of the data. One is that, this idea that 23% of those surveyed expect to close permanently in the next 6 months. It really shows just how dire the situation is. We just had a small business committee hearing yesterday that echoed similar kinds of concerns from people about how they have so little cash for they be able to get to the next month or the next 3 months. And a lot are worried about whether they can make it through this winter in New Jersey and elsewhere in this country as we continue to be in such a tough place. The second statistic that really stood out for me from this survey is that 61% said that they missed out on critical aid because they did not believe they were eligible. And I hear this all over the place, again, especially from AAPI business owners and communities of color, whether that's due to language barriers and issues that we've seen particularly hit immigrant-owned businesses, first-generation businesses, but also just in terms of the speed with which this information got out there, or the Paycheck Protection Program did. A lot of times businesses that had the strongest banking sector relationships, lender relationships, were the ones that were able to kind of get at the front of the line, especially in the first round last spring. This is something that has particularly disadvantaged AAPI businesses as well as communities of color. We tried to make some fixes about going through community lending institutions, adding greater flexibility to what businesses can use this for, that, understand that it's not one size fits all for all businesses out there, and that they'll come in all different shapes and sizes. That's something that I was able to really learn and hear from through our partners at ACE and through some of the other efforts that are out there. So I just want to commend you. I think this really highlights, that statistic really highlights the work that we have ahead of us to be able to get this information out to these businesses, to be able to connect with them in ways that they might not formally be able to get through local chambers of commerce or other types of efforts. What the work you're doing really is so critical to be able to get to parts of our economy and our business sector that are particularly strained right now. So I just want to, again, commend you for what you're doing in that direction. And this last thing I'll just say is that you have played such an important role in helping me and other of my colleagues like Congresswoman Grace Meng to be able to have this kind of information, to assess what is going on, to engage with this. As I said, the information that you provided really helped me understand tangibly what it is that we face. So I just want to thank you for that, and I hope we can continue to build on that partnership and that effort moving forward. So with that, I know you got panel coming up, so I won't get in the way of that, but I just want to say thank you for what you do. I look forward to continue to work with you. We have a lot to do, but I want to just highlight what Katie said. We have to have optimism. We have to project hope about what comes next. Because the alternative to that is too catastrophic. We got to work together, and I think we can pull together as a community. And thank you for being a leader in that community. Take care.
Thank you, Congressman Kim. We really appreciate your encouragement and especially your incredible leadership and strong advocate for small business. Now I would like to introduce Vanna Tran, our moderator for today's panel discussion. Vanna is Director of Community Engagement for Nielsen. Nielsen is such an incredible partner with National ACE. Understanding that data empowers communities, business, and individuals, Vanna is able to connect the dots between culture and the data in order to bring a fresh perspective on dynamics of diversity. Thank you, Vanna. We're excited to have you with us today.
Thanks, Shilling. Oh no, sorry, technical issues.
Don't worry, Vanna. We will be able to handle that. Just let me know when you're ready to come back.
I am ready now. Thank you. Sorry about that, everyone. And thanks, Shilling. I would also like to thank National ACE for giving me the opportunity to be here today to discuss this important survey data, which will be crucial in addressing challenges that the AAPI small business community faces. And I also want to say thank you to Katie for the great work. It was fantastic findings that you shared. And like Congressman Kim, I love how you ended the presentation on a note of optimism. Here at Nielsen, we provide the media industry with the most accurate understanding of what people listen to and watch. Hence, counting everyone and ensuring that all voices are seen and heard are at the heart of who we are as a company. As part of our Diverse Intelligence series, we are proud to offer our first report on the state of inclusion and representation in television programming in the US. You can download a copy of that report on Nielsen.com. I do echo Shilling's sentiments in terms of doing our part in collecting more meaningful data on our community and ensuring that it gets into the hands of those making decisions. The hope is that collectively, we all can work together to create a more inclusive ecosystem and a society that embraces diversity. With that said, I'm pleased to introduce today's panelists. Our panelists come from across the AAPI community and have carried out a lot of impactful work on behalf of the community. We have Courtney Pong, owner and general manager at CSZ Boston, a company creating fun, hilarious entertainment and learning experiences through improv. Also, we have Samuel Hyun, a chairperson for the Asian American Commission of Massachusetts, as well as Joseph Cruz, a partner and principal at EY. So thank you all so much for joining us today. With that, I want to start out the first panel question. I'd like to address it to Courtney. So with the findings, we see there's been a lot of impact to small businesses. And as a small business owner, Courtney, how has the COVID-19 pandemic impacted you and your business? And to the point of AAPI business owners being optimistic about the future, are you optimistic? And if so, why?
Oh, fantastic. Thanks, Vanna. So I would say when it comes to impact from COVID-19, I would say for our business, it's a 1-2 punch, and I'll explain. So like many in the performing arts and training companies, we are negatively impacted in very similar ways. So, ticket sales and in-person education revenue was zeroed out. Workshops and corporate training revenue was significantly reduced. And then we had our overall decreased morale across, many company members and performers and directors. So that would be the first punch. I would say the second punch, the second blow requires taking a deeper look at the industry that I'm a part of specifically. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see this across other industries as well, which is that, the landscape of our industry, which is improv comedy, comedy training, improv applied training, it's historically predominantly white and white male, from performers all the way to leadership. So I should mention here that in addition to teaching improv as an element of comedy and entertainment, we also teach it in the workplace as skills that are applicable for communication and collaboration. So you can imagine that with a lack of representation, there are whole populations that maybe don't know or believe that these skills are for them. So in order to increase the diversity and equity in this space and then grow the representation, it required us to do and go against some conventional practices in Boston. So, in Boston, we are in the unique position of being the only improv comedy brick and mortar owned by a woman and an Asian American woman. But we're also located in an area that's not predominantly white and tourist heavy like they are in Boston. So this means that, introducing ourselves and our offerings to an area that isn't already immersed in this form is wildly different than other players in the space. So when it comes to, the way we grew was by patiently building relationships in the community over time in our small community of Roslindale, and then through doing live in-person opportunities. So opening up our theater as a resource for community groups and grassroots organizations, as well as doing a more education heavy approach. But again, it's all very in person. So, it has hurt our traction. The inability to use our physical space to build our practice and grow our revenue to keep going. But I would also say it goes a lot larger in the negative impact of my business, but on helping evolve the industry as a whole to make these skills more accessible to more folks. So it's not just a negative impact on revenue, but for the long road ahead of what it means to grow an industry to be more diverse and more equitable. Whether or not I'm optimistic, I am absolutely optimistic. I would say that there is, from everything we know about being in the virtual space or being forced into the virtual space, where there is a want and a very desperate need for human interaction and community building. So, these in-person spaces are not going to go away. They will not be replaced. It will take time to rebuild and trust and the feelings of safety again, but the want, it still remains. I would say that while virtual does have its limitations, it also has some unique benefits. A lot more is possible when you spend less time trying to shoehorn, what you've always done and focus on more treating it as a separate, unique opportunity. So virtual created, a new revenue stream that will have its own roadmap, even, after we return to in-person offerings. For small businesses in our neighborhood, we've witnessed them. It became sort of a forcing function to launch a couple of initiatives like online shopping that they had never hit go on before. But in so many ways, virtual made the various experiences that we and other places offer a little bit more accessible to a couple of other diverse audiences. It lowered the barrier to entry, whether it was cost or accessibility or learning style. So in our own industry, this word has come up a lot, quite a bit, the word of resilience. So using improv and teaching companies and students skills of resiliency, the past year has really grown these parts of myself and the business. So I am optimistic. Along with, the skills that we've discovered, along with the ones that we've leaned on. So, yeah.
That's great. And it's great to, and once more, it just speaks to the sense of optimism that entrepreneurs like yourself have, how you've pivoted your business, and really gives me hope for what, post-COVID could bring for everyone. So thank you for that, Courtney. This next question is for Samuel. As someone who's been involved in state government, how would you rate the small business programs implemented by federal and state governments? What do you think is crucial for both the federal government and the state of Massachusetts to focus on in the months ahead as it relates to small business relief measures?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I think it's a really important one because the role of the public and private sectors is going to be really critical to see how we come out as a community and as a country. So I think that the number that really strikes people is the fact that 61% of Asian American small business owners didn't know, right? They didn't even apply because they didn't have access. And so I actually think that number would have been worse if it weren't for the great work that's done by ACE. It wasn't for the great work that was done by other organizations similar to it. And also our federal delegation, with Congressman Kim, Congresswoman Meng. So I actually think that number would have been significantly worse if you didn't have strong advocates that were going, which really does underscore the fact that our community continues to be overlooked and ignored. Right? This is not something that's new. This has been a consistent theme within our time in this country, and we're always told to, kind of be grateful for what we have, when in reality we deserve far more. And so for me, I think that, if I were to rate, the programs, it's challenging, right? Because as someone who understands, who's worked within, I used to work for the Massachusetts House Speaker for 5 years. So I have a significant amount of experience within the government. And so I understand just how challenging it is at that state level because of the implementation process. So the federal government can pass let's say they pass a federal program that is, expended out by a block grant, which would be just unrestricted money that comes from the federal government to states to be able to use it in whichever ways that they deem necessary. But then there's the implementation process, and every state has different ways in which they go about their budgetary process, about the way that they are go about being able to spend their money. And so they have different ratings in terms of how well they do financially. So then it gets even more complicated than when you take that money and you try to make programs for the municipal level, because then they have a different interpretation. And then after that, when it goes to the small businesses, they have a different interpretation and they have different challenges. And so it's really difficult to actually rate how well a program is doing, because sometimes it's too short of a time period to actually be able to understand what the impact of it. But when that goes to the next question, which is, what should the federal government be doing and what can state governments be doing? And this is where there was a reference to one of the panelists being passionate about language access and what I call language justice. And this is when the federal government needs to step up. The federal government needs to step up in the sense of appropriating money specifically for translation services, because much of the reason why many of our community members don't have access to programs is because they are not English speaking proficient. And so if you can't read it, you can't understand it, or how many of us have experienced having to be the translator for our parents when we're young children, things are gonna slip through the cracks. And this is where the government has to step up and make sure that these documents are accessible to our community members, because we deserve it. We absolutely deserve it. We come here, we work hard, we contribute so much to the broader community, and we absolutely deserve to have access. So for me, it really comes down to of the federal government stepping up and working with state and local governments to make sure that they're translating these documents so that we have access, have a fair shot just like everybody else.
That's amazing. And once again, I'm always I like to think of very optimistic, and it makes me extremely proud of the work that ACE and folks like yourself, Samuel, who continue to advocate for the community AAPI, which, like you said, many times is overlooked on a number of platforms. I know even with Nielsen, we strive to do diverse representation with all the measurements that we provide back to the media, because each community has a function within the ecosystem of our country. And it's so important that we provide that recognition platform. Thank you. A question for Joseph. As you're looking at the big picture, what are the positive aspects of the economy that you see for current and future AAPI business owners?
Thanks, Vanna. So, as vaccines starting to roll out, so it's obvious to folks that that's going to benefit the AAPI small businesses, right? A lot of us are in the type of businesses that require customers coming and feeling safe. So one positive note from my standpoint, I live in California, is that although it's not a smooth rollout of the vaccinations, people are getting vaccinated. My parents got vaccinated. My wife's parents got vaccinated. So I'm seeing that as a positive, and then hopefully businesses will start to be able to increase their revenue and start doing it. I'm in the working for EY. I'm a tax partner, so I see a lot of the businesses starting to recover. Unfortunately, I've seen a lot of businesses get severely impacted by this. But another bright spot that I see in the economy, and a lot of thanks to our members of Congress, especially Congressman Kim and Congresswoman Meng, is we've talked a lot about PPP, and Katie, thank you for that stat that Sam highlighted about people not being aware. But one other area that I see as a bright spot that was as a result of congressional action is something called the Employee Retention Credit. And for the folks that the 60% of the folks that weren't aware of PPP or that they were eligible, maybe they also aren't aware that they're also eligible perhaps for the Employee Retention Credit. And by action of Congress, they made it even easier for folks to be able to be eligible for both. So before last year, if you took money out as a PPP loan, you weren't eligible for the Employee Retention Credit. But as a result of the last act, as long as you don't double dip between the two funds, you can take advantage of both. So a quick primer on the Employee Retention Credit. Businesses, especially our constituency, the API community, which were affected by governmental shutdowns, or maybe they had a partial shutdown because of COVID, you're eligible for the Employee Retention Credit. So if you took money on the PPP, you could get loan forgiveness, and at the same time, potentially you could get up to about $19,000 per employee as a credit, and that's an immediate credit whether you do it on a quarterly basis and get the refund, or you could amend it and get it right now if you can. So I see those things as that lifeline that everybody talks about, right? To help them get through this until vaccines are rolled out, get them through so we could start. I'd love to go to a restaurant and enjoy myself and order as much food and beverages as I want. But in the meantime, if we can give these lifelines out, and thanks to National ACE for getting the message out, if the businesses that are tuning into this Facebook Live, this webcast, can understand, hey, there's other lifelines, as Sam was saying, there's these other lifelines. Make sure you take advantage of it. And I'm happy to after this, if people want to ask questions about that, let me help you get the resources that you need when it comes to these things that you are eligible for. Take advantage of it.
Wow, and Joe, that's so my family has a lot of small business owners, and it's so great to hear that, and you stepping up to take questions from the audience, after this, and we welcome all those questions. But definitely the challenge is having businesses understand the access that they have to these programs. And with the language barrier that Sam mentioned earlier, it's going to be something that the community has to work together with. And once again, it's great to hear, ACE and everyone else here in this call trying to get this out to the community. So with that, Sam, going back to you, what do you anticipate being, and I spoke about barriers, but being some of the largest barriers that will stop potential AAPI next generation entrepreneurs from starting their business?
Yeah, it's a great, perfect segue. I think part of it is, the acknowledgement that our community has a lot of work to do before we even view ourselves as a family. The reality is that the AAPI community, we're very fragmented in the way that we've historically operated, whether that is due to geopolitical strife, whether that's due to not even language barriers between our own communities, right? And so I think one thing that I'm really hopeful of, actually, though, so there's the kind of ugly reality, and then there's the hopeful part. What I'm seeing a lot within, I'm 29, I'm a millennial, and what I'm seeing within my generation, the generation following with Gen Z, the generation right above, there's starting to be a lot more communication, right? We're starting to realize that we need to set aside those differences and have those difficult conversations to start creating and building community amongst each other, and supporting each other as we run for elected office, supporting each other as we're starting businesses, supporting each other as some of our own are being attacked. What I saw the other day on an app called Clubhouse was one of our own was being attacked by an influencer who is not Asian or AAPI. And then in a huge coming together, we literally all came together as a community, and we acted. We reached out to media. We reached out in ways that we can support each other. And because of that, we made a really strong stance, and we were then supported by other communities of color as well. Like the Black community really showed up for us in that sense. And so I believe it's that, in going forward, in order for Asian American small businesses to be successful going forward, we also have to not only come together as a community, but work with other members of other communities to make sure that we're standing alongside them, because this is not just about us, it's about all of us.
For sure. And, it always goes back to that saying that everybody knows, together we're stronger, right? And we can leverage learnings from other counterparts, community members, other community groups. And I think one of the things that I also really appreciate is the younger generation coming up. You talk about small business owners. I see children who are now taking the lead in guiding their parents to navigate this new world, if I could say it as such, where the fabric of our nation is not the way it was before. So it's really, really great to see that that's happening, and always looking for the silver lining, because, hope is something that will keep pushing us forward to achieve and accomplish. And we have time for one last question to Courtney. How have you managed to advocate for you, your business, and the AAPI community during the COVID-19 pandemic?
Thanks, Hannah. So I've done improv for 19 years, and some of the core skills that we've been teaching over the 35 years the company has been around. One of the core skills that we teach is that everybody on a team brings unique value, that the parts are not interchangeable, that exactly who you are. So like Sam, in your role with Hate is a Virus and other organizations you're a part of, who you are is exactly why this thing works. So when there are discussions about small businesses, it's taking the time to ask leaders harder questions about if the relief offered is equitable, like we've mentioned earlier, or building awareness that relief is not one size fits all. So everyone's lived experience is different, from how they grew capital for their business to the roadblocks on their journey to get their very first commercial space, and how the experience is very different from as a woman and a woman of color owner of a business in predominantly white city. It's a very different challenge. So reminding myself and the community that these are not just businesses that need money to pay people to live, but to go one step further, and that these are unique individuals, that they represent many things to different people in the community. Some of them are trailblazers in their own industry, and we want to remind ourselves to fight hard for them to stay and have their place, and to pave the way for so many others, and so just so that we can see what's possible, so that they can also lead and build. So again, it's not just, we have this saying with our group, it's not me tonight, it's us over time. It's always us over time. So when it comes to the comments we just had talked about, Vanna and Sam, about what it means to bring others along with you, we've discussed this in the ACE Next Gen community quite a bit, which is if you give, or if you get ahead, it is your responsibility to reach back and pull others up with you, right? And reminding ourselves that every single person brings value, and they have their own unique path that they can pave for others. We just have to continue to make a space for them. So thank you.
That's great. And I know you guys have provided such great responses to these questions here. And I'm sure there's a lot of questions from the audience. So at this point, I'll take some questions, and it looks like we have one here. So this can be addressed to either Sam or Joe. Many small businesses don't have savvy finance resources that can help them understand how they can take advantage of tax credits. So how do you give advice or give some thoughts behind that? And can you indicate why, and then I'll have a follow-up question after that. But yes, so if you can give some thoughts behind that, either Sam or Joe.
Yeah, and I welcome Sam's thoughts for the ground, but I understand that plight. It's hard to, if you're not connected to somebody in the community, then it's hard to, like, if you don't know how to read and you're not fluent in English, it's hard to access a lot of this stuff. The language is out there, and the process is not so difficult, especially when I was talking about the employee retention credit. It's not so difficult to be able to get it. It's just a matter of being able to understand that you're eligible for it. Whereas the PPP loan, that you have to go to a qualifying SBA lender in order to get it. So I don't actually have a great solution for that access. other than just kind of operating my network. You know, I have plenty within my network that speak all the Asian languages. But I do welcome, Sam, your thoughts on how to provide that access to people to be able to get this. They deserve this funding, and how to get access to it.
I think part of it is the problem is like a longer thread of, I think many members of our community don't feel like this is their home. And so because of it, they don't feel like they're entitled to a lot of the resources that are provided. And so there's like this hesitancy to actually apply because they're like, well, is that for me? Am I allowed to be a participate in this? Versus where, you know, if you're born here and there's more of that sense of entitlement of being like, I deserve this. This was created for me, right? And so you're first in line, so it's like, I think for us, it's like communicating to our community members that this is for them, right? Is it still a challenge? A lot of the paperwork can be really daunting. It can be very, intimidating. But I think if we continue to push our community that this, like, you need to get in line for this, you need to get access to this because you deserve it. And I think that's where it's like, as community leaders, we really do need to push and advocate to our community to do that. But also, this is why we need representation, right? This is really why we need people at the table. Like, if you really look at the numbers, like, you know, look at the Massachusetts Asian American Caucus, like the numbers in terms of the representation percentage-wise comparatively to the rest of the state legislature is minuscule. And that's actually not that bad comparatively to other states. So imagine how bad it is everywhere else. Imagine how, you know, and then even at the federal level, where you have, you know, Andy Kim, you have Grace Meng, you have Pramila Jayapal, Ro Khanna, but like, we can probably, you know, Ted Lieu, we can name them on our, you know, both our hands, like, of how many members of Congress that we know. You do that for white people and it's not, you can't stop, right? So I think this is where, like, there's so many different angles that we have to take, but we need representation. We need our leaders in positions of power, you know, and we also need to make sure that we're pushing our community members that they deserve this.
That's great. And one of the other things is when we talk about these programs and people feeling like they may not be eligible, or they, you know, all the things that you mentioned, Sam. This question is for Katie in terms of your report. When you talk about these PPP programs, did the AAPIs indicate why they thought that they were not eligible for these programs?
I was on mute. So it's a good question. I think that part of it, and there's a couple other questions, Vanna, that are coming in. I think it actually dovetails off of what Sam just said, is I do think it's about people having access to information. You know, there hasn't been a specific reason why people didn't think they were eligible, but I would also guess that if we went out and talked to people one-on-one as it relates to the answer to that question, it's probably how they started their business. They didn't start their business with an SBA loan. They didn't start their business with a business loan from a traditional banking institution. They actually probably, got, family loans to start their business. They have been wary of, taking on additional debt. And so I think there's a little bit of these, the challenge that I think a lot of businesses had is they had never interacted with the SBA prior to the PPP. And so it was an overwhelming situation. And, I know that we have some friends from the SBA that are on the call that have worked, tirelessly at the regional offices. But I think from the national office perspective, the SBA actually didn't know how to work with small businesses. These 5 or less employees, the self-employed became eligible. That is actually, while the Small Business Administration has the name small business, they are much more attuned and able to work with businesses that are, pretty much 100 employees or more. And so I think part of this became, they were trying to use what I would use as very traditional ways to get the money out the door. But so many of those traditional ways required the business owner to have a pre-existing financial banking institution. It required them, to a certain degree, to have a level of sophistication that I just think, many business owners are really smart about running their business and can make good decisions about their business. But when they start opening up to a massive federal program that they're unsure about, there are still some comments about, language requirements. In fact, even if you're fluent in English like myself, I'm helping a lot of my friends who are business owners, and they're getting denied for what I would use the word ridiculous reasons. And so, especially if there's a language barrier, if there's already hesitation to engaging with these programs, I think it just becomes a compounding factor. And I know, Joe and Sam and Courtney, because of geographically where they live, there have been some investments in, community development financial institutions, are called CDFIs. Again, they serve a very specific population. And I think what National ACE has been trying to do since the pandemic started is really leverage this network to communicate with AAPI businesses and ensure that there is a way that they can get resources. Because I know there's some other questions about there's just not enough resources out there. It is a nasty, vicious cycle, but I think data like what National ACE has commissioned in this conversation is not just a starting point, but we are well on the way of trying to mitigate some of the issues we've seen.
Yeah, and I think once again, I echo everybody's sentiments here. There is such a need for not just advocacy within our own group to be represented, but also for advocacy to get this information and resources out to the community who needs it. And it's great to have to be a part of this panel, have all Courtney, Sam, and Joe be a part of it. So in a closing question. And this one maybe could go to Courtney here. And you mentioned earlier, but why is advocating for the AAPI community so important to you, as a small business owner in your respective area?
Sure. I think it is extremely important to me. I grew up in doing improv comedy, and there were not a lot of Asian representation. There's not a lot in the industry, and I think there are just different ways to access communities, and not everybody is going to go where nobody else is, right? So we need that strong representation and to keep raising folks and voices and to keep expanding these spaces so that everybody is seen and has a fair shot at things. So I think it's been important to me to give chances that I wasn't necessarily always exposed to, but also remembering that a lot of our work needs to be meeting people where they're at and learning how, instead of forcing them to come to us and say that if they're not receiving these benefits, that it's because it's on them, and realizing it means we need to change the process. It means we need to take a deeper look at how we're doing things because it's not working. So it's important to me to consistently find new ways to reach communities because that's, again, I keep coming back to the same thing, which is if you get, you should be giving, and not just to your own group, but to reach back and grab everybody and take them with you. So it's important to me to keep giving back.
That's great. And thank you. So with that, I'm going to hand this back to Shilling to provide some closing remarks. And once again, thank you for allowing me to participate in this. It was an absolutely amazing panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Vanna. What an incredible panel. Joe and also Courtney, Sam, and all Next Gen leaders, thank you so much. I learned a lot. And I think this panel has a great information, especially thank you for sharing such inspiring stories. I want to thank all of you for joining this with us on this panel and webinar. Especially, I want to thank Congresswoman Grace Mann and Congressman Eddie King and all moderator Vanna Tran, and reimagine mainstream and the public-private strategies. ACE will continue work with all of you to overcome this hardship. We have instituted a program to help small business restart their operations safely and strategically. If your business is in need of one-on-one consulting or other resources, please contact us through our app's website at acesmallbusiness.org. All our services are free of charge. According to our survey, 65% of AAPI business owners are optimistic that their business will survive. So, despite all these challenging times, we will still celebrate our Lunar New Year's. Please join our next event coming to celebrate Lunar New Year, and you can check our website at the nationalace.org. And also the survey result will be posted on our website. So see you all at our next event. Have a safe and happy Lunar New Year. Thank you.